Hello friends, and welcome to Escaping the Mouse with your host, me, Brock Roll. Alright, when I got up this morning, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do for a vlog. It often happens, and then all of a sudden, fate stepped in. Now you'll remember from my last video that I rearranged this thing, basically bent the branches up a little bit so that they wouldn't be streaming all over the ground like they were before. And then I mentioned at the end, after I got done with this and replacing that sprinkler head that broke, I mentioned I wanted to mow the lawn. And since I'd actually run the sprinklers a little bit yesterday, it wasn't really a good time to mow the lawn because it really makes a mess when the grass clippings are all wet and they get stuck all over everything and they don't end up, and it's a big mess. So I decided to wait until the next day, today, to do this. And I was going around the yard as I usually do with my lawnmower, and out in the middle of the yard there are a couple of access points. One of them gets me access to the water main. You've seen me go in there a couple times when I've had to shut off the water in the house. And then there was another access point right behind it, and I never really was sure what was in it, at least not until today. So this is the access point to the water main that enables me to shut off the water. Like I said, you've seen me go in there a few times. Now right behind it is this access point here, and I never really was sure what it was, but now that I've taken a little bit closer look, I think this is where they're tapping into the water system to feed the irrigation system. So I think from here, this kind of routes to different parts of the house or different parts of the yard, and it's used to feed the water, the sprinklers and all that stuff. There's sprinkler heads all over this place, and I think this is where it all kind of gets redistributed to different parts of the yard. See, in the past, when I did sprinkler systems, I always tapped into the water main right near the house, built a series of anti-siphon valves, and fed everything that way. That's one of the things that sort of puzzled me about this place, is I have never been aware of where the anti-siphon valves are. Well, I think this is a major distribution node for that. There are little access points all over the yard, and I think individual anti-siphon valves are in there, but this is the main distribution point right behind the water main. And normally there's a plastic cover over the top of it, but when I went over it with a lawnmower today, as I've done dozens of times before, this time it pulled the cover off and shredded it with a lawnmower blade. I went over it and I heard this sound, and as it chewed up, and you can still see there's pieces of the plastic all over the place here. Now, I tried going over to Home Depot and getting a replacement one of these, but they don't have anything that's even close to this. So I can't just have this thing open and exposed like this as a safety hazard. Somebody's going to walk across the lawn and step in this, and then I'm going to get sued. So we don't want that to happen. So I got to improvise some sort of a cover for this, and I think I'm going to just design something out of plywood. Let me show you what I have in mind. This is a piece of scrap plywood I have left over from when I built the table in the living room. You may recall I did that about a year ago, and this is a little piece that was left over from that. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this thing to fit that hole. I think this will be big enough to do that, and then I got to figure out how I am going to keep it waterproof, because wood, doesn't do very well in a wet environment, and this is definitely going to be a wet environment, but I got some ideas for that. So first thing I think I want to do is cut it into its basic shape, and that's going to be about 8 inches by 14 inches. So excluding the round corners, basically this thing is 14 inches this way and 8 3/4 inches wide this way. So I've basically just cut a square piece in those dimensions that will ultimately fit over the hole. And now all I got to do is just trim the circles out, and I'm going to do that with a router. And actually I was looking at some of the new tools I acquired from my father, and I actually think that this might be the appropriate tool to do a better job. I think it'll allow me to cut the nice smooth round corners maybe better than I could do with a router. So I'm going to see how this works, and maybe this will be an easier way of doing this. Alright, this is actually working pretty well, and it's kind of slow going here. It's probably taking about 5 minutes to make each one of these cuts, because the blade is really thin. You don't want to put a whole lot of pressure on it, especially considering the fact that I'm dealing with a 3/4 inch piece of plywood here. But It is coming together pretty quick. I may need to do a little sanding on the edges just to make it fit a little better, but I think this is going to be a good solution, at least until I can find an appropriate cap that'll work more permanently. Alright, so I got the rough edges cut, and I also drilled a couple of holes in the middle because you kind of need finger holes to put something like this in and out. So I think this is a basic shape of the thing. Let's go see if it fits. I may have to do a little bit more trimming still. Actually, it does fit pretty well. I do want to trim it a little bit more just to make sure that we have a little bit of loose slack in there so it comes in and goes out easily. Right now, I'm going to probably end up painting over this, and that'll add to the thickness a little bit. So that's another reason why we need to thin it down just a hair. But we're close. Alright, so I've shaved it a little bit here and a little bit here on the top. Now I think I just want to kind of smooth off all the way around the curves here. And I got a nice little belt sander, another nice little toy I inherited from my father that's going to make quick work of this. Alright, yeah, this is working a lot better now. There's a little bit of slack in there, and that's what you want. You want it so it can come in, go out really easily. So I think this is going to probably work out for me. I think the next thing I got to do is waterproof this, because this is going to be in a wet environment, and it's going to get the sprinklers, it's going to get rain, it might even get snowed on. And one thing I've learned from plywood is it does not hold up very well when it gets wet. Over time, all those individual layers tend to peel apart, and so I got to make sure that doesn't happen because I want this to last for a while. Alright, so this is Rust-Oleum that I'm using. It's something that's designed to basically take metal pieces and protect them. It kind of puts like a plastic coating over it, and that protective coating will prevent moisture from getting in. That's what I want to do at this point. I want to do multiple coats of this so I get a nice thick coating on it. Move over to the other side here. And this should dry pretty fast. I'll probably try and get a couple of coats on this today, and hopefully we can get this thing into the ground tonight. So I'll come back in a little bit and we'll give this thing another coat. I'll have to do a few coats on the bottom also, and that's pretty much how you make a replacement cap for your access point when it gets ground up by a lawnmower, or for any other reason you may need one. Alright, a couple hours have gone by. We got 2 coats on each side of this thing. It's still just a little bit tacky, but I've moved it outside, and I think we're going to consider this project done. It'll dry a little bit. We're going to run the sprinklers tonight, and it should be ready by the time that happens. But at this point, it should remain pretty weatherproof, and hopefully this one won't get sucked up into the lawnmower. I can only imagine what would happen if it did. So I think that's all that I have for today. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you next time on Escaping the Mouse. Good night.